Welcome to a quiet space. If you are listening to this, your day is finally over. The demands of the outside world, the physical exertion of your routine, and the endless mental calculations have all come to an end. You have done enough for today. Now it is time to transition from the active, sympathetic state of doing into the quiet, parasympathetic state of resting. Tonight, we are going to explore a fascinating biological paradox. We are going to talk about the science of physical exertion, the profound mechanics of resistance training, and the heavy, methodical process of muscle hypertrophy. It might seem strange to talk about lifting heavy weights while you are trying to fall asleep, but true physical training is not chaotic. It is a highly structured, predictable rhythm. And more importantly, the actual progress of your physical body does not happen under the bright lights of a gym. It happens right now, in the dark, while you are perfectly still. So as we explore the microscopic healing of your muscle fibers, the calming chemistry of a quiet mind, and the physical relief of everyday gravity, allow your own body to sink heavy into the mattress. You do not need to hold on to any tension. The work is done. It is time to let your body heal. Take a slow, deep breath in, and as you exhale, let the weight of the day completely go. When we think about physical strength, we almost always picture the gym. We picture a bright, loud environment filled with heavy iron and kinetic energy. We associate the building of muscle with the active, strenuous pushing and pulling of weight against gravity. But this is one of the greatest biological illusions of the human body. The truth is, you do not build a single ounce of muscle while you are lifting weights. The gym is not a place of construction. It is a place of deliberate, calculated destruction. When you step under a heavy barbell and begin a repetition, you are introducing a profound mechanical stress to your skeletal system. As the heavy load stretches your muscle fibers, they undergo microscopic tearing. This is known as microtrauma. You are actively breaking the tissue down, causing a localized, controlled, inflammatory response. Your heart rate spikes, your central nervous system goes into overdrive, recruiting every available motor unit to survive the immediate physical demand. You leave the gym feeling larger, but that is simply blood pooling in the damaged tissue. Physiologically, you leave the gym weaker than when you arrived. The actual magic of muscle hypertrophy, the physical construction of new, thicker, stronger tissue, happens entirely in the dark. It happens when the heart rate plummets, the nervous system powers down, and the body becomes perfectly, motionlessly still. It happens right now while you are sleeping. When you drift into the deep, slow wave stages of sleep, your brain releases a massive surge of human growth hormone. This chemical signal travels through your bloodstream, waking up tiny, dormant cells that surround your muscle fibers. These are called satellite cells. In the absolute quiet of the night, these satellite cells travel to the sites of microscopic damage. They fuse with the torn muscle fibers, donating their nuclei and quietly synthesizing new proteins to bridge the gaps. They weave the tissue back together, making the fiber slightly thicker and slightly more resilient than it was the day before. This magnificent microscopic reconstruction cannot happen under the bright lights of the gym floor. It requires the profound, heavy sanctuary of your bed. So as you lie here, understand that rest is not a break from your progress. It is the exact environment where your progress is made. You have provided the stimulus. The hard work is already done. Your only biological responsibility now is to surrender to the heavy pull of sleep and let your body quietly rebuild itself in the dark. There is a profound psychological comfort in the physical act of lifting weight. In a world filled with chaotic variables and unpredictable demands, the human mind deeply craves structure. It wants a clear map and undeniable instructions. When you approach a resistance training session, you are stepping into a space where the rules of physics are perfectly consistent. Gravity never changes its mind. A 40-pound weight will always weigh exactly 40 pounds. This absolute certainty provides an immediate sense of grounding. When you pick up a weight and begin a set, you enter into a very specific, rhythmic meditation. You lower the resistance, feeling the slow, heavy stretch in your muscle fibers. You pause for a fraction of a second at the bottom of the movement, and then you reverse the direction, pushing against the invisible force of gravity. One repetition is completed, then another, then a third. You fall into a predictable mechanical loop. Your breathing begins to match the exact tempo of the movement. You inhale deeply on the downward phase, pulling oxygen into your lungs and bracing your core. You exhale smoothly on the upward phase, releasing the tension as the weight rises. This synchronization of breath and physical effort is an ancient calming technique. It forces your mind to stay entirely in the present moment. You cannot worry about tomorrow when you are focused on the physical reality of the weight in your hands. As the set continues, the physical demand increases, the muscle begins to burn, and the speed of the movement naturally slows down, but your mind remains perfectly calm, anchored to the counting of the repetitions. You are not lost in the effort. You are simply navigating a mathematical path that you chose for yourself. And then you reach the end of the set. You set the weight down. The moment the steel leaves your hands, a massive, immediate wave of physical relief washes over you. The mechanical tension vanishes from your body. Your heart beats with a slow, powerful rhythm, and you sit in the quiet atmosphere of the gym, focusing only on the slow, steady intake of oxygen. You have completed the cycle. You can rest your mind knowing you successfully delivered the biological signal for growth and simply wait for the next set to begin. The human body is an incredibly efficient biological machine designed over millions of years of evolution with one primary goal in mind, which is survival. Because of this, the body is highly conservative with its resources. It does not want to change unless it is absolutely forced to. In biology, this desire to remain exactly the same is known as homeostasis. The body prefers a state of predictable, low-energy balance. Muscle tissue, by its very nature, is metabolically expensive to maintain. It requires a constant supply of calories, oxygen, and nutrients just to exist. Therefore, your body will not build new muscle simply because you want it to. You have to convince your central nervous system that building new, thicker tissue is a matter of absolute physical survival. When you first subject your muscles to the stress of resistance training, your body interprets this as a physical emergency. It recognizes that the environment has suddenly become much heavier, and the current amount of muscle mass is no longer sufficient to handle the demand safely. In response to this emergency, the body begins the microscopic repair process we discussed earlier. It synthesizes new proteins, reinforces the torn fibers, and adds a microscopic layer of new tissue. It builds a biological suit of armor specifically designed to ensure that the next time it encounters that exact same physical challenge, the task will be easy and the body will not be in danger. This biological efficiency is beautiful, but it creates a fascinating paradox for anyone trying to continually build strength. If you always lift the exact same amount of weight for the exact same number of repetitions, the body will quickly adapt. The weight that once felt like a severe physical threat will eventually feel completely normal. The emergency is over, the biological signal for growth is turned off, and the physical changes will completely stop. To continue building strength and muscle over a long period of time, you must engage in the slow, patient math of progressive overload. Progressive overload is the fundamental law of physical adaptation. However, it is often misunderstood as a frantic, ego-driven race to lift the heaviest object in the room. In reality, true progressive overload is a quiet, highly calculated and ongoing conversation with your own central nervous system. It is the methodical process of asking your body to do just a microscopic fraction more than it did the week before. You are gently coaxing the body out of homeostasis, offering it a slightly new puzzle to solve. This can be achieved in several beautifully subtle ways. Perhaps you add a single, tiny plate to each side of the barbell, increasing the total resistance by just a pound or two. Perhaps you keep the weight exactly the same, but you ask your muscles to perform one additional repetition before you finally set the weight down. You might even keep the weight and the repetitions identical, but you purposefully slow down the movement, forcing the muscle to stay under mechanical tension for just a few seconds longer. These tiny, incremental changes might seem entirely insignificant in the moment. When you add a single pound to a heavy lift, you might not even consciously feel the difference in your hands, but your central nervous system feels it. Your motor units register the slight increase in demand, and the biological signal for growth is gently switched back on. Over the course of weeks, months, and years, these microscopic additions compound into massive physical transformations. It is very much like a biological investment account. You are depositing tiny amounts of effort every single week, trusting entirely in the slow, undeniable math of human adaptation. There is a deep, profound psychological comfort in this long-term process. When you understand the slow math of progressive overload, you realize that you do not need to make huge leaps. You do not need to perform heroic feats of strength or completely exhaust yourself every time you train. You only need to be 1% better than you were the last time. You simply accept the current boundary of your physical capability, wherever it happens to be on that given day, and then you quietly push that boundary just a fraction of an inch forward. It removes all the anxiety of the gym, replacing it with a calm, predictable, and infinitely rewarding mathematical equation. We often view the gym as a highly isolated and artificial environment. It is a specific room filled with specialized equipment that we visit to perform very specific, repetitive movements. Because of this, it is easy to think that the benefits of lifting weights are confined entirely to that room. But the actual reward for this deliberate physical stress is not found inside the gym at all. The true biological reward is experienced outside, in the quiet, unscripted moments of your everyday life. When you engage in the slow, methodical process of muscle hypertrophy, you are fundamentally altering the way your entire physical structure interacts with the world around you. Every single day, from the moment you wake up and step out of bed, you are moving through an invisible, relentless field of gravity. It is a constant mathematical force pulling down on your shoulders, compressing your spine, and adding weight to every single object you interact with. For a body that has not been conditioned to handle physical resistance, this constant gravitational pull is quietly exhausting. It is the reason why carrying a heavy box of books up a flight of stairs leaves you breathless. It is the reason why standing for a long period of time makes your lower back ache, and why your joints feel stiff and tired by the end of the day. An unconditioned body relies heavily on its passive structures to fight against gravity. It relies on the ligaments, the tendons, and the skeletal frame to bear the load, which causes friction and fatigue. But when you spend time consistently lifting weights, you are forcing your body to build a much stronger, denser, and far more capable biological engine. You are actively shifting the burden of gravity away from your fragile joints and placing it onto thick, resilient muscle bellies. As your muscle fibers thicken and your central nervous system becomes highly efficient at recruiting those fibers, something truly remarkable happens. The physical mass of the world around you does not change. Gravity pulls toward the center of the Earth with the exact same mathematical force it always has. The heavy box of books weighs exactly what it weighed before you started training. But to your newly adapted nervous system, the physical world has suddenly become much lighter. Think about the mechanics of reaching down to lift a heavy object off the floor. Before you began resistance training, the electrical signal your brain sent down your spinal cord was relatively weak and uncoordinated. Your muscles would struggle to fire at the same time, leaving your lower back vulnerable to the strain. Now, when you approach that same object, your body knows exactly what to do. Your brain fires a powerful, synchronized electrical current. Your thick leg muscles contract with effortless precision. You automatically draw a breath low into your diaphragm, bracing your abdominal muscles and creating a tight cylinder of high internal pressure that perfectly stabilizes your spine. Your latissimus muscles in your back flare and lock into place. The box rises from the floor smoothly, almost floating upward. As you walk up the stairs, your strengthened core holds your posture perfectly upright. Your larger, more capable quadriceps and glutes absorb the physical impact of every single step, acting as massive biological shock absorbers for your knees and your hips. You are no longer fighting against the physical world, you are simply gliding through it. There is a profound, quiet confidence that comes from this kind of physical capability. It is the deep, subconscious knowledge that your body is a strong, reliable vessel. When the unpredictable physical demands of the day arise, your body does not panic. It simply responds with quiet, effortless strength. You have built a heavy biological buffer against the friction of the everyday world, allowing you to move through your life with a deep physical grace and a remarkably quiet mind. There is a very specific, heavy peace that settles over you in the hours following a rigorous physical effort. If you have ever sat quietly on the edge of your bed after a heavy workout and a warm shower, you know this feeling perfectly. Your muscles are physically exhausted, your breathing has slowed down to a deep and steady rhythm, and your mind is completely blank. This profound sense of calm is not just a psychological reaction or a simple emotional response to finishing a difficult task. It is a massive, highly orchestrated chemical event happening deep inside your brain and cascading smoothly through your entire nervous system. Throughout a normal day, the modern human mind is often a remarkably loud and chaotic place. It is constantly processing an endless stream of visual and auditory information, navigating complex social interactions, remembering a long list of obligations, and trying to calculate the unpredictable variables of the future. This constant forecasting requires a tremendous amount of cognitive energy, keeping the brain locked in a fast, high-frequency state of alertness known as beta waves. But when you subject your body to the intense, singular focus of resistance training, you forcefully interrupt that chaotic mental loop. The physical demand of moving a heavy weight against gravity requires so much neurological bandwidth that there is simply no room left for external anxiety. You cannot worry about tomorrow when you are completely consumed by the physical reality of the weight in your hands right now. You are actively burning off the nervous, stagnant energy that accumulates during a sedentary day. When the workout finally ends and you set the weight down for the last time, the stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline that fueled your effort begin to quickly fade away. In their place, the brain releases a heavy, comforting wash of highly specialized neurochemicals. First, your nervous system is flooded with endorphins. Endorphins are your body's natural painkillers. They are chemically similar to morphine, designed by millions of years of evolution to block physical discomfort and allow humans to push through difficult physical barriers. But in the quiet aftermath of a workout, these endorphins pool in your system, wrapping your mind in a heavy biological blanket of profound comfort, and physical relief. Alongside the endorphins, your brain releases a slow, steady wave of dopamine and serotonin. Dopamine is the molecule of reward and motivation. It provides that quiet, internal sense of deep accomplishment. It is the chemical signal that tells your brain the difficult work was worth the physical effort, leaving you feeling deeply satisfied and secure. Serotonin then steps in to regulate your mood and your sleep cycle. It gently lowers your internal body temperature, slows your racing thoughts, and prepares your entire biological system for a state of deep, restorative rest. But perhaps the most powerful and fascinating chemical released during resistance training is a group of lipid molecules called endocannabinoids. These are naturally occurring compounds that bind to the exact same receptors in your brain as the active ingredients found in cannabis. They are the primary biological drivers behind what we often call the runner's high or the lifter's high. Endocannabinoids aggressively reduce anxiety and actively quiet the overactive, worrying centers of your mind. They smooth out the sharp edges of your thoughts, making the world feel distant, soft, and entirely manageable. When this entire chemical cocktail of endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, and endocannabinoids washes over your prefrontal cortex, it sweeps away all the remaining mental clutter of the day. What is left behind is a profoundly quiet mind. The volume of the outside world is turned down to a mere whisper. The anxious, racing thoughts that might normally keep you awake simply cannot survive in this deeply relaxed, chemically optimized environment. As you lie down and feel the gravity release its grip on your spine, these molecules continue to circulate, deepening your relaxation. You are left with a mind that is perfectly still, a body that feels pleasantly heavy, and a central nervous system that is perfectly primed to fall into a deep, uninterrupted, and restorative sleep. We have talked about the psychological piece and the chemical relief that follows a dedicated training session. Now we must zoom all the way in. We must leave the macro perspective of the entire human body and travel down into the microscopic landscape of the muscle tissue itself. This is where the true silent work of physical transformation actually occurs, and it is a process of absolutely stunning biological architecture. A skeletal muscle is not just a solid, uniform block of red tissue. It is a highly complex, beautifully woven structure that resembles a massive biological suspension cable. The entire muscle is made up of smaller bundles called fascicles. Inside those fascicles are individual muscle fibers, which are long cylindrical cells that are often thinner than a single strand of human hair. And inside those microscopic fibers are even smaller, thread-like structures called myofibrils. These myofibrils contain the actual contracting proteins of the body, which are known as actin and myosin. When you lift a weight, these tiny filaments slide past one another, grabbing and pulling with incredible force to contract the muscle and move your skeleton. When you subject these fibers to the intense mechanical tension of progressive overload, you create microscopic tears in this delicate architecture. This microtrauma is the fundamental catalyst for all physical growth. Your body immediately recognizes this incredibly small damage and initiates a highly controlled, localized inflammatory response. Blood vessels dilate, rushing oxygen, nutrients, and immune cells to the specific area that was worked. This is why your muscles feel full and warm in the hours after training. It is a microscopic construction zone perfectly prepped for the rebuilding process. But the actual rebuilding does not happen while you are awake. It waits for the absolute stillness of the night. Lying dormant on the very outside edge of your muscle fibers are specialized, sleeping cells known as satellite cells. They remain completely inactive during your daily life, waiting patiently for a chemical signal to wake them up. That signal arrives when you finally close your eyes and drift down into the deepest stages of delta wave sleep. In this profound state of unconsciousness, your pituitary gland releases a massive pulse of human growth hormone into your bloodstream. This hormone acts as the master biological key. It circulates through your body, reaches the damaged muscle tissue, and awakens the satellite cells. Like a team of microscopic architects working the night shift, the satellite cells spring into action. They migrate directly to the sites of the microtears along the muscle fiber. Once they arrive, they do something truly miraculous. They multiply, and then they physically fuse themselves to the existing damaged muscle cell. By fusing with the muscle fiber, the satellite cells donate their own nuclei to the existing cell. Because muscle fibers are incredibly long and complex, they require multiple nuclei to manage their cellular operations. By adding more nuclei, the muscle cell suddenly has the biological capacity to manage a larger volume of fluid and synthesize a greater number of contractile proteins. With the new nuclei securely in place, the cell begins the quiet, methodical process of protein synthesis. It takes the amino acids from the food you ate earlier in the day and meticulously weaves them into brand new strands of actin and myosin. It bridges the microscopic gaps created by your workout, layering the new proteins over the old ones. The muscle fiber is carefully stitched back together, but it is not just repaired to its previous state. The body overcompensates, making the fiber slightly thicker, significantly denser, and measurably stronger than it was the day before. This entire magnificent feat of biological engineering is happening right inside of you, in total silence, while you are resting. You do not have to consciously direct it or worry about how it works. You have already provided the stimulus, and you have provided the nutrients. Your only remaining responsibility is to sink deeper into the mattress, allowing the deep, slow rhythm of your sleep to orchestrate the quiet reconstruction of your physical frame. The human nervous system is an incredibly complex network of electrical impulses, constantly shifting back and forth between two very different states of being. To fully understand the profound physical peace you feel at the end of the day, we have to look closely at the autonomic nervous system. This vital system operates entirely beneath your conscious awareness, working quietly in the background of your life. It regulates your heartbeat, the steady expansion of your lungs, the constriction of your blood vessels, and the entire slow process of digestion. It is divided into two distinct branches that act perfectly in opposition to one another, functioning very much like the accelerator and the brake pedal of a finely tuned biological vehicle. The first branch is the sympathetic nervous system, which is commonly known as the fight or flight response. This is your biological accelerator. When you step into the gym and place a heavy barbell on your back, your brain immediately activates this highly alert sympathetic state. It perceives the severe physical stress of the weight as a direct threat to your survival. Instantly, your adrenal glands flood your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate aggressively accelerates to pump highly oxygenated blood directly to your working muscles. Your pupils dilate to take in more light and sharpen your visual focus. Your airways expand to pull in massive amounts of oxygen. At the very same time, your body completely shuts down any biological process that is not immediately necessary for surviving the next few minutes. Digestion comes to a complete halt, and your immune system temporarily suppresses itself. All of your available energy is funneled directly into the physical exertion of the immediate moment. It is a highly demanding, incredibly loud state of physiological emergency, but you cannot stay in this heightened state forever. The human body is not designed to operate at maximum capacity without severe biological consequence. When the physical exertion finally ends and you return to the quiet sanctuary of your home, the biological brake pedal must be firmly applied. This brings us to the second branch of the autonomic nervous system, which is the parasympathetic state. This is often referred to as the rest and digest system, and it is the exact biological opposite of the fight or flight response. As the sun goes down and you remove yourself from the bright lights and loud noises of the waking day, your brain senses that the immediate physical threat has completely passed. The sympathetic accelerator is safely lifted, and the heavy calming brake of the parasympathetic system is slowly and deliberately engaged. This beautiful transition is not instantaneous. It is a gradual, descending slope that you can physically feel washing over your entire body. The first thing you might notice is the deceleration of your heart rate. The rapid, pounding rhythm of the afternoon settles into a remarkably slow, heavy, and predictable pulse. Your breathing changes from shallow, chest-driven gasps into deep, expanding, diaphragmatic breaths that gently massage your internal organs. As your nervous system successfully switches over, your blood vessels begin to gently dilate, drawing blood away from your extremities and pulling it safely back toward your core. This allows your digestive system to power back on, ready to process the nutrients you consumed earlier in the day and convert them into the essential building blocks your damaged muscles desperately need. Your core body temperature begins to drop by a fraction of a degree, which is a critical biological signal to your brain that it is time to sleep. This profound parasympathetic shift is the physical embodiment of exhaustion, but it is not a negative feeling. It is a deeply rewarding, thoroughly earned fatigue. It is the undeniable physical proof that you have worked hard enough to warrant a profound and complete biological recovery. The heavy, sinking feeling in your limbs right now is simply the parasympathetic nervous system taking absolute control, shutting down the unnecessary functions of the waking world and preparing your physical frame to heal. You do not need to fight this feeling of exhaustion. You simply need to recognize it for what it truly is. It is the quiet, ancient mechanism of your own biology, granting you full, unconditional permission to completely let go of the day. We are conditioned to believe that physical progress is fragile. If we stop training or simply allow ourselves to rest for a season, we fear our hard-earned gains will completely evaporate. But human biology is far more generous and deeply loyal than the world would have you believe. Your body possesses a profound, permanent memory of every single effort you have ever made. This biological phenomenon is commonly referred to as muscle memory. While many use this term to describe the neurological ability to remember a physical skill like riding a bicycle, there is a second kind of muscle memory that occurs purely at the microscopic level. It is a physical permanence written directly into the architecture of your muscle fibers. Understanding how this cellular memory works offers an incredible, heavy sense of psychological relief. To understand this deeply comforting truth, we must return to the microscopic construction zone. Intense mechanical tension causes microtrauma, waking up sleeping satellite cells that travel to the site of the damage. When those cells fuse with your muscle fiber to help it grow, they donate something incredibly valuable. They donate their nuclei. A nucleus is the master control center of a biological cell, containing the complex blueprints required to manufacture new contractile proteins. In a muscle fiber, each individual nucleus acts like a tiny biological manager. A single nucleus can only oversee a specific, limited volume of cellular fluid and tissue. If a muscle fiber wants to grow larger to handle a heavier physical load, it absolutely must acquire more nuclei to manage that new space. You earned every single one of those additional nuclei through the methodical process of progressive overload, securing them through restorative sleep. They are hard-won physical assets, deposited safely into your biological framework. But what happens when the predictable rhythm of your routine is broken? Sometimes life demands your attention elsewhere. You might face a shift in your responsibilities or a season where you simply cannot step under the heavy barbell. As you step away from the resistance, you begin to notice your muscles slowly shrinking. The physical size diminishes, and it feels as though your intense effort is quietly fading into nothing. It is easy to feel a heavy sense of loss in these moments. This shrinking is nothing more than a temporary illusion of volume. The body is a highly efficient machine that does not want to waste energy maintaining a large physical engine it is no longer actively using. To conserve daily calories, it slowly drains the metabolically expensive fluid from the muscle cell and gently breaks down the contractile proteins. The water leaves and the physical size reduces. However, here is the beautiful truth of human biology. The fluid drains away and the protein shrinks, but the nuclei remain perfectly intact. The master control centers that you fought so hard to build do not disappear. The body does not destroy them or flush them away. Instead, they simply power down and go to sleep deep inside the tissue. They become permanently embedded in the architecture of the muscle fiber, waiting patiently in the dark. This means your physical effort is never truly lost. The microscopic factories inside your muscles have not been demolished. They have simply turned off the lights and locked the doors. If you take an entire year away from resistance training and then finally return to the gym, you do not have to start from the beginning. You do not have to go through the slow process of recruiting new satellite cells. The blueprints are already drawn, the factories are already built, and the managers are sitting right there on the floor. As soon as you introduce the mechanical stress of gravity back into your life, those dormant nuclei instantly wake up. Because the management structure is already in place, they immediately resume the process of protein synthesis at an accelerated rate. The muscle fiber rapidly fills back up with fluid and tissue, rebuilding its former size in a fraction of the time it took to build it in the first place. There is an immense comfort in this scientific reality. It completely removes the heavy burden of constant perfection. It tells you that your physical body is an incredibly loyal companion, holding on to your past efforts and storing them safely. You do not have to be afraid of taking a break, and you do not have to feel guilt for resting. Every heavy lift you have ever completed has left a permanent mark on your physical structure. The foundation has been poured, and it is made of solid stone. You can rest tonight knowing that your strength is not fragile. It is a permanent part of who you are, quietly waiting to support you whenever you are ready to ask for it again. When we think about the physical growth of the human body, we almost exclusively focus on the expansion of the muscle fibers themselves. We picture the thickening of the protein strands and the addition of new cellular nuclei. But a muscle is not an isolated, independent structure. It is a living, breathing biological ecosystem. And like any growing ecosystem, it requires a massive, complex infrastructure to support it. If you build a larger physical engine, you must also build a completely new network of roads to supply it with fuel. This brings us to one of the most quiet, fascinating, and beautiful adaptations of resistance training, which is the biological construction of the deep river system. In the medical world, this process is known as angiogenesis. It is the physical creation of brand new blood vessels from the existing vascular network. To truly appreciate this, you have to imagine the microscopic landscape inside your newly built muscle tissue. As the muscle fibers become thicker and more demanding, the existing blood supply is no longer sufficient to keep them fed and oxygenated. The body senses this microscopic lack of oxygen, and it quietly releases a specific set of growth factors into the surrounding tissue. These growth factors act as biological architects, signaling the walls of your existing blood vessels to gently soften and begin to branch outward. Slowly, in the absolute darkness of your internal body, microscopic capillaries begin to sprout. They branch out like the slow-growing roots of an ancient tree, meandering deliberately through the tiny spaces between your muscle fibers. They weave a dense, highly complex and perfectly optimized web of biological rivers. This is a massive construction project happening entirely beneath your conscious awareness. Over the course of weeks and months of consistent training, your body literally lays down miles of new, microscopic vascular tubing, completely transforming the internal landscape of your physical frame. This profound physiological change is the reason behind the deep, comforting warmth you feel in your body in the hours and days following a heavy workout. The warmth is not just residual energy, it is the physical feeling of thousands of newly constructed rivers safely carrying a high volume of warm, heavily oxygenated blood directly into the core of your muscles. There is an incredible rhythmic piece to this vascular system. During the day when you are active, these blood vessels dilate to rush vital energy and oxygen to the working tissue, flushing away the acidic byproducts of physical exertion. But right now, as you lie completely still in the dark, this vast river network serves an entirely different, deeply restorative purpose. Your heart is currently beating with a very slow, heavy, and predictable rhythm. With every single, deliberate pulse, it is pushing a rich supply of liquid nourishment through those newly constructed miles of microscopic capillaries. This warm, slow-moving fluid carries the vital amino acids directly to the doorsteps of the sleeping satellite cells we discussed earlier. It washes gently over the torn muscle fibers, providing the exact chemical materials required to stitch the tissue back together. You can actually feel this happening if you bring your attention inward. As the heavy blankets trap the heat against your skin, you can feel a second, deeper layer of warmth radiating from deep inside your limbs. That internal warmth is the steady, quiet flow of your own enhanced vascular system. It is the biological proof that your body is fully equipped and completely capable of healing itself. You have built the roads, and the nourishment is flowing exactly where it needs to go. You can simply ride the slow, steady rhythm of your own pulse, knowing that the deep rivers of your body are quietly taking care of everything. We have spent a great deal of time exploring the profound adaptations of the muscular system, but the muscle is only half of the biological equation. A skeletal muscle, by its very definition, must anchor itself to something solid. It must cross a joint and attach firmly to the bones of your skeletal frame in order to generate any meaningful physical force. Therefore, it is biologically impossible to build a larger, significantly stronger muscle without also demanding an equally profound transformation from the bones themselves. We often make the mistake of visualizing the human skeleton as a dry, static, and entirely lifeless frame. We picture bone as a brittle, unchanging white stone that merely props us up against gravity. But inside the living body, your bones are incredibly dynamic, highly vascular, and constantly remodeling tissues. They are just as alive and just as responsive to physical stress as the muscles that surround them. In the late 19th century, an anatomist discovered a magnificent biological law that governs the human skeletal system. It is known as Wolff's Law. Simply put, This law states that a bone in a healthy person will continually adapt to the physical loads under which it is placed. When you step under a heavy barbell or pull a heavy weight from the floor, you are not just challenging your muscular endurance. You are actively, physically bending your own skeleton. This bending is microscopic, completely invisible to the naked eye, but your central nervous system feels it instantly. As the thick, newly built muscle fibers violently contract to move the weight, they pull aggressively against the tendons, which in turn pull with massive force directly on the bone. This intense mechanical pressure creates a tiny electrical charge across the surface of the bone tissue, known as a piezoelectric effect. This tiny electrical spark is a massive wake-up call to specialized cells living deep inside the bone marrow, known as osteoblasts. When you finally finish your workout and go to sleep, these osteoblasts spring into synchronized action. They migrate to the exact areas of the bone that experience the heaviest mechanical stress. Once there, they begin to quietly lay down new layers of calcium, phosphorus, and dense collagen matrix. They are actively reinforcing the structural pillars of your body. Over time, as you continue the slow math of progressive overload, your bones do not just remain static, they become measurably thicker. The outer layer of the bone, the heavy cortical shell, becomes incredibly dense. The internal, honeycomb-like structure of the bone becomes tightly woven and heavily mineralized. You are literally turning your skeleton into a heavier, vastly more resilient type of stone. This creates a feeling of profound, unshakable physical stability that carries over into every single second of your life. You are no longer navigating the world with a fragile, porous frame. You have built a heavy, fortified chassis. When you walk, when you stand, and when you simply exist in the physical world, there is a deep, subconscious comfort in knowing that your very core is fundamentally unbreakable. This deep, skeletal heaviness is perfectly suited for sleep. Right now, you do not have to fight gravity. You do not have to support your own physical frame. You can allow the mattress to completely take over that responsibility. As you lie here, imagine the true physical density of your own bones. Feel the heavy, mineralized weight of your legs sinking down into the bed. Feel the dense, fortified structure of your spine resting perfectly flat and entirely supported. You have built a remarkably strong foundation capable of handling whatever physical weight the waking world demands of you. But for tonight, that strong foundation has absolutely nothing to carry. You can surrender the heavy weight of your bones entirely to the bed, letting go of all structural tension and allowing yourself to drift smoothly into rest. For centuries, human beings have viewed the muscular system through a purely mechanical lens. We are taught to visualize our muscles simply as biological pulleys and levers. We imagine them as thick ropes of tissue whose only purpose is to contract, pull against the bones of our skeleton, and move us through physical space. We measure their value entirely by the amount of physical force they can generate against the downward pull of gravity. But within the last 2 decades, the scientific community has discovered something so profoundly astonishing that it completely rewrites our understanding of what a muscle actually is. Your muscular system is not just a mechanical apparatus, it is the largest endocrine organ in the entire human body. An endocrine organ is a gland that manufactures and secretes chemical messengers directly into the bloodstream to control the functions of other organs. We typically think of the thyroid, the pancreas, or the adrenal glands when we hear this term. But the living tissue of your skeletal muscles functions in the exact same way, on a remarkably massive scale. When you engage in resistance training and you force those muscle fibers to violently contract against a heavy weight, you are doing much more than causing microscopic damage. You are physically squeezing a massive biological pharmacy, forcing it to manufacture and release a highly specialized family of proteins called myokines. Myokines are microscopic chemical messengers that are synthesized exclusively inside the muscle cell. The moment you begin to push your physical limits, these proteins are pumped directly into the deep river system of your vascular network. They travel rapidly throughout your entire body, acting as a powerful internal medicine. They communicate directly with your liver, your pancreas, and your adipose tissue, regulating your metabolism and reducing systemic inflammation. But the most fascinating journey these myokines take is the journey upward, traveling directly up the spinal cord and toward the brain. The human brain is protected by a highly selective border known as the blood-brain barrier. It is a biological security system designed to keep foreign substances, toxins, and many common chemicals entirely out of your neurological tissue. It is incredibly difficult for most things to pass through this wall, but the myokines produced by your working muscles possess a very specific biological key. They pass effortlessly through the blood-brain barrier and enter the deep, delicate structures of your mind. Because of this incredible mechanism, some neurologists have begun referring to myokines as hope molecules. Once these molecules cross into the brain, they initiate a cascade of profound neurological healing. They actively hunt down and neutralize the inflammatory markers that cause mental fatigue, brain fog, and the heavy physical symptoms of anxiety. Furthermore, they stimulate your brain to produce a massive surge of a compound called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This compound acts exactly like a rich biological fertilizer for your neurological pathways. It protects your existing brain cells from the damaging effects of psychological stress, and it actually promotes the physical growth of brand new neurons in the hippocampus, which is the center of your memory and emotional regulation. This means that every single time you step under a heavy barbell, you are literally manufacturing your own internal medicine. You are using the physical movement of your limbs to physically alter the chemical structure of your brain. The mental clarity and the quiet peace you feel after a workout is not just a psychological release, it is the direct biological result of millions of microscopic hope molecules crossing into your brain and actively repairing the damage of the waking world. As you lie here tonight, those myokines are still circulating smoothly through your bloodstream. They are still crossing the barrier. While you sleep, your muscles are acting as a quiet, protective pharmacy, continuously dispensing the exact chemical medicine your brain needs to heal. You can surrender entirely to the dark, knowing that your physical body is actively fighting to protect the peace and the resilience of your mind. When we look at a highly developed physical physique, we perceive the muscle as incredibly dense, solid tissue. We imagine it to be made entirely of tightly woven protein and heavy, unyielding cellular machinery. But the actual internal composition of a human muscle is much more fluid, dynamic, and fascinating than it appears from the outside. A well-trained muscle is not just a solid block of mechanical tissue, it is essentially a massive, highly sensitized biological sponge. It is a living battery designed to hold an incredible, heavy volume of liquid energy. To understand this deep biological truth, we must look at what happens when you consume food. When you eat a meal, particularly one rich in carbohydrates, your digestive system breaks that food down into simple sugars known as glucose. This glucose is absorbed through the walls of your intestines and drifts freely into your bloodstream, providing a fast, immediate source of energy. However, floating glucose is highly volatile. If it remains in the bloodstream for too long, it can cause severe inflammation and damage to your delicate vascular network. The body must find a safe, secure place to store this energy very quickly. In a body that does not engage in physical training, the storage space is incredibly limited. The body struggles to manage the floating energy, often converting it into adipose tissue simply to get it out of the bloodstream. But when you have dedicated yourself to the slow math of progressive overload, you completely change this biological equation. You transform your skeletal muscles into massive, highly efficient metabolic sinks. When you exhaust your muscles during a resistance training session, you completely drain their internal energy reserves. By the time you finish your workout, your muscle cells are essentially empty, starving for fuel. They immediately open millions of microscopic doors along their cellular walls. They become hypersensitized to the hormone insulin, and they begin to aggressively vacuum the floating glucose straight out of your bloodstream. They pull the volatile energy out of the open water and lock it safely away behind their cellular walls. Once the glucose is safely inside the muscle fiber, the body performs an act of brilliant biological packaging. It strings the individual glucose molecules together into long, complex, and highly stable chains called glycogen. These heavy glycogen granules are packed tightly into the spaces between the contractile proteins, securely storing the potential energy for your next intense physical effort. But here is the most fascinating physical reality of this storage process. The biology of the human body dictates that it is mathematically impossible to store glycogen by itself. For every single gram of glycogen your muscle pulls in and stores, it is forced to also pull in roughly 3 grams of pure water. The glucose and the water bind together, pulling fluid directly from your bloodstream and driving it deep into the belly of the muscle tissue. This is the precise scientific reason why your muscles feel so incredibly full, tight, and physically heavy in the days following a rigorous workout and a restorative meal. You are not just carrying around larger protein fibers, you are carrying around a massive, hidden reservoir of liquid fuel. You have literally built a larger biological battery, and you have filled it to the absolute brim with water and energy. This deep, internal hydration makes the muscle tissue incredibly resilient, highly conductive to electrical signals, and heavily insulated against physical damage. There is an immense comfort in possessing this kind of biological storage capacity. As you lie in bed right now, bring your attention to the physical weight of your arms and your legs. Feel how heavily they sink into the mattress. That feeling is not just gravity. It is the literal physical weight of the stored water and the potential energy locked safely inside your tissues. This massive energy reservoir serves a vital purpose while you sleep. Throughout the long, quiet hours of the night, your brain requires a constant, steady supply of glucose to dream and to organize your memories. Because your muscles have safely banked so much energy, your blood sugar remains perfectly stable and beautifully regulated. Your living batteries are quietly providing a flawless, uninterrupted power supply to your resting mind. You are anchored to the bed by the deep, hydrated weight of your own stored potential, perfectly insulated, perfectly fueled, and perfectly prepared for the slow, quiet descent into sleep. The world of physical fitness is often a very loud and chaotic place. It is an environment filled with constant noise, immense pressure, and deeply ingrained myths that can easily make us feel like we are never quite doing enough. We are surrounded by aggressive messages that tell us our bodies are stubborn, that progress requires constant suffering, and that any deviation from a punishing routine will result in immediate failure. Tonight, as the heavy quiet of the evening settles into your room, we are going to completely dismantle these exhausting misunderstandings. We are going to replace the frantic anxiety of the fitness industry with the logical, elegant, and deeply comforting truths of human biology. One of the most common and anxiety-inducing misconceptions is the idea that if you stop lifting weights, your hard-earned muscle will magically turn into fat. This belief creates a terrible, heavy pressure. It creates the feeling that you can never safely step away from your training. and that your physical progress is actually a ticking biological clock waiting to betray you. But at a cellular level, this transmutation is absolutely, fundamentally impossible. Muscle tissue and adipose tissue are two entirely distinct biological structures. They are as fundamentally different from one another as your bones are from your skin. A muscle fiber is a highly active, complex cylinder filled with contractile proteins and fluid. A fat cell is simply a passive biological storage container designed to hold excess energy. When you take a long, necessary break from your physical training, your muscle fibers simply reduce their volume to conserve daily energy. They drain the water and shrink the proteins, but they do not, and they physically cannot, melt into fat cells. If body fat happens to increase during a period of rest, it is simply because the daily metabolic demand of your body has lowered while the intake of energy has remained the same. Your muscle is not turning against you, it is merely powering down and going to sleep safely beneath the surface. You can rest deeply tonight without the fear of your physical efforts being somehow corrupted. Another incredibly pervasive myth is the belief that a workout is only successful if it leaves you severely sore and physically depleted the next day. We are taught to chase the heavy, aching pain of delayed onset muscle soreness, believing it is the only true indicator that we have triggered muscle growth. But human physiology tells a much gentler and far more forgiving story. Extreme muscle soreness is not a sign of incredible hypertrophy. It is simply a biological sign of neurological novelty. It means you introduced a physical movement, an angle, or a volume of work that your central nervous system was completely unaccustomed to handling. Once your body adapts to a specific, predictable routine, that severe soreness naturally fades away entirely, even as the muscle continues to grow thicker and significantly stronger. You do not need to violently destroy your tissue to convince it to adapt. Muscle growth requires a precise, measured mechanical stimulus, not absolute physical annihilation. There is a profound, heavy peace in knowing that your physical progress does not require constant suffering. You can engage in a deeply effective routine and wake up the following morning feeling highly capable, physically fresh, and entirely free of pain. And this leads us to the final, and perhaps the most exhausting misconception of all, which is the deeply flawed belief that more is always better. The modern world operates on the assumption that if a small amount of effort is good, a massive amount of effort must be infinitely superior. People believe they must spend endless hours in the gym performing countless sets and completely draining their biological batteries to force a physical change. But your body operates on the incredibly elegant principle of the minimum effective dose. Your central nervous system only requires a very specific, limited amount of mechanical tension to successfully flip the biological switch for growth. Once that microscopic switch is flipped, doing more work does not create more muscle. It only creates a massive, unnecessary deficit of energy. You are simply digging a much deeper biological hole that your parasympathetic nervous system has to frantically try to fill while you sleep. True physical mastery is not about doing as much as you can possibly tolerate. It is about doing the exact right amount, and then having the profound, quiet discipline to simply stop. You can completely let go of the guilt of leaving the gym while you still have energy remaining in your limbs. You have applied the perfect measured dose of physical stress. The biological cascade has already begun. We have finally arrived at the ultimate destination of your physical training. We have explored the structural illusion of the gym, the slow mathematical rhythm of progressive overload, the chemical relief of your quiet mind, and the microscopic blueprint of your muscle fibers. But all of these complex biological events are merely the preparation for what is happening to you right now. The single most important phase of physical adaptation does not require any effort. It requires absolute surrender. You are currently entering the anabolic sanctuary of sleep. In the world of human biology, there are two primary states of metabolism. The first is the catabolic state, which is the process of breaking things down. Throughout the entire day, from the moment you woke up and stepped out of bed, your body has been in a catabolic state. You have been burning calories, spending precious cognitive energy, breaking down muscle tissue, and slowly draining your central nervous system. The second metabolic state is the anabolic state, which is the process of building things up. This is the state where energy is safely stored, new tissue is synthesized, and physical growth is permanently secured. The human body can only truly enter a deep anabolic state when you are completely and utterly unconscious. As you lie here in the dark with the heavy weight of the blankets pressing down on your shoulders, your brain is quietly navigating the hidden architecture of sleep. You are moving far away from the fast, chaotic beta waves of the waking world and drifting down through the relaxed alpha and theta waves. Your final destination is the deepest, most restorative stage of unconsciousness, characterized by massive, slow-rolling electrical currents known as delta waves. When your brain finally descends into delta wave sleep, a miraculous biological lock is turned. Your physical body is temporarily paralyzed to keep you safe while you dream, ensuring that you remain perfectly still. Once this absolute stillness is achieved, your pituitary gland receives the ultimate signal to open the floodgates. It releases the largest, most concentrated pulse of human growth hormone that you will experience in a 24-hour cycle. This powerful anabolic hormone cascades smoothly through your bloodstream, traveling directly to every single muscle, fiber, tendon, and ligament that you stressed during your waking hours. It binds to the receptors in your tissue, signaling the satellite cells we discussed earlier to begin their microscopic repair work. It accelerates the synthesis of new proteins, pulling the amino acids from your bloodstream and weaving them into thicker, stronger, and far more resilient muscle fibers. This is the magical window of time where all of your hard work is finally materialized. If you were to deprive yourself of this deep, slow wave sleep, the physical stress of the gym would amount to absolutely nothing. The microtrauma would remain unhealed, the central nervous system would remain depleted, and the body would stay locked in a catabolic state of breakdown. Therefore, the simple act of sleeping is not a luxury, and it is certainly not a waste of time. It is the most highly productive, biologically necessary thing you can possibly do for your physical progress. Every single minute you spend resting in this bed is a direct investment in the structural integrity of your physical frame. So as the night stretches out quietly ahead of you, allow yourself to sink as heavily as possible into the mattress. Feel the perfect support of the bed beneath you rising up to meet the weight of your body. Release any lingering tension in your jaw. Let your shoulders drop completely away from your ears and let the small muscles around your eyes completely relax. There is nothing left to calculate, nothing left to lift, and absolutely nothing left to accomplish today. The environment around you is perfectly secure, the temperature of the room is cool, and the powerful biological signals for growth are already circulating safely through your veins. You have done the hard work of breaking the tissue down, and now you have earned the absolute right to lie perfectly still and let your body put it all back together. Breathe deeply into your stomach, feel the slow, heavy rhythm of your own heart, and allow yourself to drift safely down into the dark, quiet, and profoundly healing sanctuary of deep sleep.